us as we launch into the Living and Working Abroad show. Welcome today. Glad you could join us, and I hope you will find this interesting. We're talking today, our main feature is about living and working abroad with inheritance tax for expats based upon UK assets. So we'll look at that in a bit more detail soon. If you can just do that, I'm just get you more centered on there so we can see a bit more clearly what we're doing. So welcome to this week's Living and Working Abroad show from Private Partnership. We specialise in helping UK expats living and working abroad, working overseas with a European office in Cyprus and the UK, but we can help expats around the world. We're also on Twitter space, so you can listen in on that and talk to us and chat to us here. So if you've got any questions that you want to ask away, and we'll answer them during the webinar after the main feature. But first of all, I want to start with this week's news, where we've looked at what's been going on in the world and how that affects expats. We see that China's got a major deflation going on at the moment, and it's had a China crisis. So China, we've been used over the last 20 years for it to be a booming economy, driving the world with products and innovation. But suddenly it's entered into a period of recession. And where is that going to be? We saw in the UK in the 2008 a major financial crisis, which carried on and endured right through to the pandemic in 2020. And in the 90s, Japan went into a deflationary spiral, which once you get into that deflationary spiral and you've got you've still got the same level of debt for mortgages and businesses, but the prices are falling. And the sales prices are falling, where you're trying to pay off the debt at the whole amount, and it just drags the whole thing and creates a stagnation in the economy, which carried on in Japan really until today, where very low inflation, low growth for many years, and it's a very difficult situation to get out of, and that's potentially where China are going at the moment now. Anything economics and anything headlines is always a moot point about whether it'll have actually come to be. But anybody who travels into China, you'll see these ghost cities where there's tower blocks built of big property boom, funded by debt, funded by international investors. And these properties are empty, they're not sold, and they haven't got any buyers. And this is a potential problem, and we've already seen one major significant international investment, Chinese property company Evergrande, collapse over the last couple of years, and potentially there's another Chinese property company that could collapse as well. That property stagnation could create the sort of issues that the UK, Europe, and Japan have had in the past, and it will cause that issue for China and for the world, and there won't be that economic impetus coming from that economy in that direction. So it's an interesting thing for expats living and working abroad, how you develop your business going that. On the good news, the China deflation could actually spread around the world with lower prices for goods manufactured and delivered overseas, easing the price on the world inflation that's going around the other economies around the world. The European Court of Human Rights has been featured again in the news, and this is designed to protect asylum seekers. Now, asylum seekers are people that they're fleeing for their lives from war zones, and they deserve protection under international rights from the atrocities that we've seen over not just the last century, but ever since mankind came into existence. That's what it's there for. But the boats crisis, the migrant crisis that Europe has got, and America in its own way, is people are using asylum laws in Europe to create this boat crisis, and it's actually wrong. What's wrong about it is that these are not running from a proper asylum conflict. The economic migrants, half of the world's population is under 25, and they're looking for new opportunities and new ways of working, and they're using the asylum rules to try and relocate to get into the UK or another economy where they can then work and earn significantly more money than they could do in their home country. And that is what has led to the boats crisis at the moment. And because all these people are then treated under the asylum laws when they're actually economic migrants, it creates a misbalance and a real problem for the developed economies. In Cyprus, we've seen riot shields and rioting as the government have had to step in and evict more than 600 asylum seekers from one resort location that they'd occupied because of the issues that were raised. Some of them illegal asylum seekers, but some of them just causing local problems in terms of disturbances or thefts or problems. So the asylum issue becomes a real issue for a government to maintain under the international conventions. But the conventions are designed to protect people that are not economic migrants, people that are running from war zones. And a lot of these people are economic migrants. What it needs is a new set of rules. If you're an expat and you're relocating overseas and you want to work, you go on your skills or you go on your business investment. What we need is a more competitive environment around the world with investment in these countries to bring on the skills and resources in those local economies. That's the way forward. The UK may pull out of the European Court of Human Rights. It doesn't mean that they're abdicating the responsibility under asylum laws, just means that they're managing economic migrants in a different way to genuine asylum seekers. The next feature I want to raise today is about India. So the UK and India could potentially have a trade deal. Now, this is the sort of thing that needs to be done to help fix the economic migrants crisis. If you've got a booming Indian economy, the young people in that population can help create the solutions for business. So a country like Britain engaging fully with the populations, with the young people providing economic wealth, then working in their local economies, will provide the income that those people need in their home countries to avoid economic migrant problems. But India is also, it's the biggest population in the world now, 1.4 billion people, bigger population than China. So a booming Indian economy in the next 20 years could replace the driver that China was if they're to fall into recession. So there's a potential trade deal for the UK and India that could be announced as soon as next month, September's economic conference in India between Britain and India, and that could pave the way for new business opportunities, new markets for UK and Indian companies, and allow a more stable way of moving people between jurisdictions. When we're looking at living and working abroad, we look back to 2008, the economy of the world and of the UK, and we see the good, the bad, and the ugly. The big financial collapse in the UK and America in 2008 was resolved with monetary easing, quantitative easing, which solved the crisis and got the economy back on a level footing. The ugly, unnecessary thing that carried on from there was that monetary easing carried on for 10 years with low inflation, low interest rates and low inflation, which caused a driver down for wages and stopped innovation. What it did do is inflate property prices, pricing many young people, a whole generation of people, out of UK property, maximising people's investments in property and skewing investment funds away from innovation and business and skill development into properties. There's a lot of people making a lot of money on property during this period, but it hasn't resulted in the economic benefits for the people in the UK. The really ugly bit about this is that monetary easing was ramped up during the pandemic, which has now resulted not in stable low inflation, but high inflation. So the UK has got its economic crisis of its own at the moment, which is to move forward. And what we need to see for the UK is investment in skills and training to get a high skill, high wage economy, be attractive for the people in Britain, much like has been created over the last 15 years in California and Ireland. So look forward to changes in the economy, which will open up the world of business and opportunity for expats, investors in the UK and for the UK abroad. If you're an employee in the UK and you want to work remotely, you can work around the corner or you can work across border. Once you work across border, there becomes issues. So if your employer is intent on keeping you as an employee, but is happy for you to work remotely and overseas, then there becomes an issue with tax and national insurance. If you're working for more than 90 days, if you're going to be under short stay rules and you want to become a resident in an overseas jurisdiction to work, then your employer, if he's paying you as an employee, has to start paying local tax and local national insurance, which is traditionally done by opening a branch or subsidiary in that location. One solution for expats would be to become a contractor instead of an employee of the UK company. But then a UK company has to apply IR35 rules, and they leave themselves liable for any tax and national insurance. And some companies may choose not to take that risk and to apply IR35 rules, which to a contractor means they're paying the same tax as they would do as an employee. So there's no benefit to being a sole trader contractor overseas working remotely if it then brings you into IR35. There's no difference, there's no advantage other than the lifestyle of living and working abroad. So what's the middle way? If you're an employee and you want to work remotely and you want to work across border, then your UK employer could agree to that. And if they do, and you work abroad, then you need an employer of record. So this is something that PROAC can do in the jurisdictions where we are, but we can also advise a company on that. That an employer of record would pay the income tax and social insurance. So if a UK employee came to live and work in Cyprus, they could pay Cyprus tax, income tax, and pay Cyprus social insurance, which would keep the employer happy, keep their records correct. There's a social insurance agreement between Cyprus and the UK, so it keeps the benefits and for pensions and for the family continuous and not being lost. But the other issue for an employee is that potentially a new expat employee working in Cyprus could potentially get 50% tax deduction, income tax deduction for 10 years or more. So the highest rate of income tax in Cyprus is 35% over 65,000 euros. So that's the highest income tax rate in Cyprus. compared to 45% in the UK. But you can pay half that rate as a maximum. So you can pay 17.5%. So you pay between 10 and 17.5% for up to for a number of years, and sort of beyond 5 years, beyond 10 years. And that employment in Cyprus also then gives you resident permit to live and work in Cyprus and the EU on a permanent basis. For more information and guidance on working remotely and an employee of record service from Cyprus, contact us at approachpartnership.com. Also in the news this week, there have been some EU Schengen shenanigans in Gibraltar, where the extra border checks have been reported on the Spanish border between Spain and Gibraltar. It's a land border, and 10,000 Spanish workers work in the Gibraltar each day. So there's plus other expats going across that border. Gibraltar, under a temporary agreement, is supposed to be in the Schengen zone, even though it's not in the EU because it's a British overseas territory. But the shenanigan is the idea that this Spanish applying extra tests and extra passport checks rather than letting freedom of movement across the Schengen border. This is a key point for expats. Although an EU citizen has a freedom of movement within the Schengen zone, the police and the border police have the right to do those passport inspections if they need to, and to change those rules. Now, whether it's a short-term political issue or a genuine criminal activity issue, we don't know. But we're watching this space on the shenanigans over Schengen border, Gibraltar and Spain. The final point in the news is we're looking at second homes. Many people this summer will be enjoying their overseas property in Spain, Portugal, France, Cyprus, or Greece. But short stay rules mean that as they're enforced by within the Schengen zone, within the EU, mean that staying more than 90 days becomes a difficulty. With visa-free travel, it's not too much of a problem at the moment, but electronic travel authorities are coming in, and this will allow the border police to apply the 90-day rule, which can mean fines if you overstay, or potential not letting you back in the future. There's a number of different ways around that. So if you've got a holiday home, one of the solutions could be to get a visitor's visa, like a 12-month visa that allows you to stay extra time. But have in mind that when you apply for that longer stay than 90 days in an EU country, they could well look for you to have your own private medical cover for that period. Not just private medical cover, but also repatriation cover. A country doesn't necessarily want to be left with a dead body and how to get that home. So they want to make sure that you've got that, and that would be in your insurance. So if you're going overseas, make sure you've got some travel insurance that includes repatriation if the worst comes to the worst. So a visitor's visa is a short-term stay. It doesn't allow you to work, doesn't allow you permanent residency, but it allows you to stay for a longer period of time in your holiday home for longer than the 90-day in 180 short stay rule that applies for the EU Schengen zone. More information and guidance on an annual visitor's visa to allow you to access your overseas property, contact us at breakaway.com. So that's all our news for this week. And if you've got any questions on that, just ask up on the Twitter space chat that's going on at the moment, or you can type a message on the YouTube channel. Thanks a lot for listening at the moment. Our main feature this week is inheritance tax. Inheritance tax applies to all UK domicile who die. Your domicile is where you're from. If you're from the UK, if your parents are from the UK, then effectively you're domicile. Expats can live and work abroad for a long period of time to try and change that, and there's things and steps that you could take. But if you haven't taken those steps, well, if you want to take those steps, contact us at proactpartnership.com, where we're very good experts at managing that inheritance tax planning for a family to avoid that liability. But if you haven't taken steps to show that you're non-domicile, then you're carrying that liability around. So if you're retired abroad in Cyprus, Portugal, Spain, or France, and the end of days is coming for you, then consider what your tax planning is for your family. Inheritance tax is charged on your worldwide assets, even if you die abroad. Exchange of information between jurisdictions will ensure that it has to be. It will be found out. Discrete tax planning in the past may have worked. In the future, it may well not work. Cyprus, for example, joined the shared information system within the EU Schengen zone in July this year, and the shared information system is against crime, and tax, not paying the right amount of tax, is a criminal offence. So it's a shared information system. When you die and you need a probate, an administration of your assets, even if you do it in the country in which you die, which is the EU law, you still need tax clearance. And if you've got assets overseas, you'll need tax clearance in those countries as well. So everything will fall under and accumulate up and catch up with you. So inheritance tax is a tax liability for British people and for British expats. So planning ahead to avoid it is important. Why? It's the biggest growing tax in the UK. £2.6 billion of inheritance tax was reported in the UK in 2023 in 3 months. So the UK is generating £23 billion of inheritance tax every 3 months, and it's rising very rapidly. The thresholds and allowances for inheritance tax are fixed. They have been fixed for a few years already, and they're fixed at the moment in law through to 2028. So we've got another 5 years at the same rate. Meanwhile, property prices, share prices, investments grow, increasing your potential liability to a higher level of inheritance tax. And with some basic steps, some basic way of living, then you can alter your affairs in such a way to avoid that liability falling on your family. 40% of your assets. So for every £1 million of property, business, investment assets, that's £400,000. It goes straight to the taxman within 6 months of your death. So that's what you're planning for your family to avoid. It's not charged on first death between husband and wife, but when you do that, you're just deferring the day you can make the decision and take the transactions to protect your family. And by waiting until after first death, you also miss a big tax planning opportunity as well. So think about it. Even if you're non-domicile to the UK, and you're not even born in the UK, any shares, business, property investments in the UK are still taxable for UK inheritance tax. So have that in mind as well. So if you've got a property in London that's worth £1 million, that is chargeable to UK inheritance tax when you die, even if you're from Spain or Cyprus or the USA. So let's have a look. Let's have a look at what some of the exemptions are. any individual can give away £325,000 to avoid inheritance tax. So for a couple, that means 2 times £325,000. If you've got a property as well, up to 175,000 each of that property value can be gifted without inheritance tax as well. So that's 500,000 for each person in a couple can be gifted without inheritance tax. So the spouse can stay in the property after first death, and that 500,000 on second death for both the mother and the father, or the two partners in the relationship, will pass on £1 million, inheritance tax free on second death, saving £400,000. That's if you wait to die. You've still got the cost and delay of probate to be involved in that, and that's your limit. Okay, but actually, any gift to a spouse is free of inheritance tax. So if you give her all the money now, or you give him all the money now, that's free of inheritance tax, even if you do it the day before you die. But if you do that, you're passing the liability on to somebody else. It's still a tax bill that's coming down the line. Things that aren't subject to inheritance tax is any money you've got in your pension fund. So if you leave your money in your pension fund and use that as an income source, that's free of inheritance tax when you die. With the lifetime allowance capped, you can put more money into pensions now, and you could use that as an income source later on. But what you need to do is nominate your beneficiaries to make sure that they can get that money at a later date. Things you can do about that during your lifetime. Money gifted in from your estate to charity is free of inheritance tax as well. So this is the American approach, with a foundation, charitable foundation, becomes tax-free of their inheritance tax rules. But there's another tricky rule, and it's a vastly underutilized rule by expats for the 7-year rule. So you could give away to a child or a family member or to a stranger £325,000 today, and it'd be free of inheritance tax as long as you survive for 7 years. Now, you may not survive for 7 years, but you may well survive for 7 years. If you're 81 today, your UK life expectancy is still another 10 years. So, you know, there's always time to give things away. And for a couple, it's 325,000 each. So parents could give to their children 325,000 each today, and it could be free of inheritance tax after 7 years. And then, actually, if you repeat that exercise, in 15 years, you can give away £2 million, and in 21 years, you've got £2 million, which is free of inheritance tax. And that saved you £800,000. So you can hold on to it to the day you die, have the cost and delay of probate, and pay £800,000 inheritance tax, or you can give it away to your children. Another quick exemption is unlisted alternative market shares, if you invest in that. And certain types of business, whether it's an unlisted or a listed company, can be exempt from inheritance tax as a going concern if they're gifted or passed into trust. So think about that. But there's another way. Instead of giving it to your wife and passing the liability on, why not, during your lifetime, gift it to your spouse? So if we have a couple, whether your assets are a business or property or investments, we gift those into a trust. Okay, and the beneficiary on first death is a spouse, and the spouse receives an income, not the capital, the income for the rest of their life. That gift, because the spouse is a beneficiary during the lifetime, it's free of inheritance tax. The gift is given, and the gift can provide an income. So you can keep the money in a pension trust fund, because all pensions are trust funds, and it gives you an income, a taxable income for life. Or you keep it inside your own family trust, and the assets, the £1 million or the £2 million you put into your family trust can provide an income, whether that's from property rental or from an investment or just for pay down of the capital. It's still income that supports the widow, whoever is a survivor in the couple's relationship, for their lifetime. On second death, the beneficiary then would be the next of kin, and it could be a charity, of course, but it could be the next of kin. So whoever that is, whether it's the children or the grandchildren, that trust can gift those assets down the generations. The children don't need to take the money out of the trust. They can keep it in the trust. Boots was a trust for hundreds of years. Wellcome Foundation is a trust. Big UK companies can be trusts, and they can keep going for very, very many years. And they provide a business foundation, or they provide an income for the relatives to receive. There's no probate with the trust. That there's no inheritance tax with the trust, and so it goes on down the years and without the 40% inheritance tax liability of being passed from generation to generation. A family trust can run for 70 or 80 years, but it can be renewed, so it can run down the generations and across borders. Better still, if you use a Cyprus International Trust, then potentially you've got no tax liability on that trust either. On your worldwide income, capital and gains, there is no tax on a Cyprus International Trust, and there is no inheritance tax on a Cyprus International Trust. So Cyprus International Trust is a base for holding a family assets of business, property, and investments that can provide income and capital and loan support to the family down the generations and across the border in a tax-free environment. For more information and guidance on how to protect your family from the cost and delay of probate, from the cost of inheritance tax and forced sale of properties to pay that inheritance tax bill in cash, contact us at breakaway.com. Thanks a lot for listening. Tune in next week to the Living and Working Abroad show, where we'll cover issues for expats living and working abroad. And if you want to talk about any of the issues that we've raised today, contact us at breakaway.com, and our live website for services. If you want to book a consultant review one-to-one or have a report, is breakaway.co.uk. Thanks a lot for listening, and we'll see you next time.